On the night of August 14th, 2025, the Russian port of Olya in Astrakhan Oblast went about its usual business. Workers unloaded a bulk cargo ship named Port Olya 4, which had just arrived from the Caspian Sea. To any casual observer, it looked routine. Containers, cranes, trucks, the ordinary flow of goods. But appearances can be deceiving. Inside the ship's holds were no ordinary supplies. Intelligence indicated they contained Iranian Shahid drones, crates of ammunition, and military equipment, all destined for Russian air bases in the south, from which attacks on Ukrainian cities were launched almost daily. No one in the port, not the dock workers, not the soldiers on duty, not the security staff, knew their actions were being watched from afar. Weeks earlier, Ukrainian reconnaissance had tracked the ship's journey across the Caspian. Agents confirmed its cargo, and satellites followed its movements. The Olya port had never been seen as a primary military hub, which is precisely why it was chosen as a secret delivery point. That illusion of safety was about to shatter. This was not improvisation. It was not a hasty reaction. It was a culmination of a carefully planned long-range strike operation, prepared for weeks, calculated to strike at the perfect moment. When the ship was docked, its cargo concentrated, and its destruction certain. At 1800 hours on the evening of August 13th, on makeshift launch pads in Kharkiv Oblast, more than 1,200 kilometers away, the plan came alive. One by one, 44 Ukrainian drones took to the air. Each had an individual flight plan. Each knew where to fly, when to drop altitude, when to climb for a target acquisition. They were not simply drones. They were a precision strike swarm designed to deliver chaos deep inside Russian territory. The hunters were on their way. The 44 drones did not fly as a single flock. From the very first minutes, they split into 3 distinct groups, each with a precise role. The vanguard, decoys, and disruptors. The first wave, 12 drones in total, flew higher than the rest. Their mission wasn't to strike the ship. They were decoys designed to draw the attention of Russian radar systems. Packed with electronic countermeasure modules and reflector panels, they lit up enemy radar screens like Christmas trees. Russian operators, staring at their consoles, suddenly saw a mass of targets entering their airspace. Almost immediately, searchlights pierced the night sky near Astrakhan. Anti-aircraft batteries began to move, their barrels shifting upward. Orders barked across radio frequencies. The Russians thought they were facing the entire strike force, but in reality, it was only the tip of the spear. The killers, precision strikers. Behind them came the second group, 20 strike drones carrying high-explosive warheads. They flew low, hugging the contours of the Caspian shoreline, invisible to most radar sweeps. Their navigation systems adjusted constantly, avoiding villages, bypassing strong anti-air defenses, conserving every ounce of battery power for the final sprint toward the target. Their operators, hundreds of kilometers away, watched through infrared cameras as the dark outline of the Caspian glittered beneath them. These drones were the killers, programmed to home in on the Port Olya for bulk carrier and its deadly cargo. The Guardians, jammers, and escorts. The remaining 12 drones carried electronic warfare payloads. Their job was to jam communications, blind radars, and disrupt any Russian attempts to coordinate a defense. They flew in loose formation between the decoys and the strikers, broadcasting bursts of noise across frequencies used by Russian S-300 and Tor air defense systems. In the control rooms, Russian operators saw their screens flicker, signals dropping in and out. Confusion spread. The Long March. For hours, the swarm pressed forward, covering more than 1,200 kilometers of hostile skies. They passed over the Volga Delta, where Russian fishermen saw faint lights flicker across the horizon. Some dismissed them as stars. Others pointed in silence, realizing they were witnessing something far more dangerous. By 2:40 a.m., the Russian military command in Astrakhan Oblast had entered full alert. Convoys of anti-air trucks scrambled to the port, searchlights swept the skies, and operators screamed into radios, trying to make sense of the multiple contacts swarming their scopes. But it was already too late, because while the Russians focused on the decoys, the killers were approaching silently, just meters above the Caspian shore. only minutes away from unleashing chaos in the port of Olya. At 2:55 a.m., the first Russian searchlights locked onto the sky above the port of Olya. Anti-aircraft guns thundered, tracers cutting jagged lines through the darkness. Dozens of shells exploded in the air, but they hit only decoys, the sacrificial drones that had drawn the defenders' attention. Then came the real strike, the breakthrough. Flying barely 20 meters above the water, the precision drones slipped past the barrage. Their thermal cameras locked onto the outline of the bulk carrier port Olya. 4 docked silently at the pier. On its decks, fuel drums gleamed faintly, and cranes towered like skeletal giants. Below in the holds, thousands of kilograms of ammunition and disassembled Shahid drones lay stacked. It was a floating powder keg, waiting for a spark. At 2:57, the first strike drone slammed into the starboard side of the ship. The explosion tore through the hull, sending shrapnel and fire into the cargo bay. Seconds later, a second drone pierced the stern, igniting containers of fuel. Flames erupted, climbing the mast and spilling across the deck. The chain reaction. Within minutes, more drones hit their marks. One detonated near the cranes, collapsing them onto ship like falling towers. Another drilled directly into the cargo hold where Iranian Shahids were stored. The impact set off secondary explosions as drone fuel cells and warheads went up in a violent cascade. The largest strike came at 3:02. 3 drones attacked almost simultaneously, striking the central section of the vessel. The combined explosions ripped the ship's spine apart. The port Olya foreshuddered, then listed heavily to one side, flames consuming everything aboard. Ammunition stored in the hold began to detonate, launching fireballs into the night sky, each blast louder than the last. The port in flames. Dock workers and guards fled in terror as fire spread from the ship to nearby warehouses. Containers split open under the heat, sending sparks and shrapnel across the yard. Vehicles parked at the pier erupted one after another, adding to the inferno. For 15 straight minutes, the port of Olya shook with explosions. Russian air defenses kept firing blindly, downing a handful of drones but failing to stop the onslaught. Operators screamed into radios, confusion spreading as radar screens flickered and jammed. By the time the last of the Ukrainian drones struck at 3:10, the port was a burning wasteland. The result, the port Olya, along with its cargo of Shahid drones and ammunition, was destroyed beyond repair. Satellite images the next morning showed the ship half sunk, black smoke still rising from its ruins, and the pier reduced to rubble. Ukrainian intelligence confirmed. The strike had eliminated hundreds of Shahid drones before they ever reached Russian launch sites. 44 drones, 15 minutes, 1 ship erased. At first light, reconnaissance satellites and Ukrainian drones confirmed what the night strike had accomplished. The once busy port of Olya now looked like a battlefield. The bulk carrier port Olya lay half submerged, its twisted hull still smoldering. Black smoke rose in heavy plumes that stained the morning sky. Cranes lay collapsed like fallen giants, and warehouses that had once stored military supplies were reduced to charred shells. The pier itself was fractured and warped, unusable for months. Entire stacks of shipping containers were scattered like toys, some glowing red from the heat. The water of the Caspian lapped against oil slicks burning in patches on the surface, leaving the shoreline coated in ash. Russian response. The Kremlin moved quickly to contain the fallout. State media called it a minor fire in a civilian port, insisting the damage was under control. But satellite photos leaked by international observers contradicted the narrative. Western news agencies compared the imagery before and after the strike, showing unmistakable devastation. A ship destroyed, a pier in ruins, and massive fire spreading to the logistics zone. Inside Moscow, the mood was grim. Commanders realized the implications immediately. If Ukraine could send a swarm of 44 drones more than 1,200 kilometers into Russian territory and wipe out a military shipment in a supposedly safe harbor, then no port, no depot, no logistics hub was beyond reach. The Caspian, once considered a rear area, was now part of the front line. The shock waves and logistics. For Russian supply chains, the loss was catastrophic. Hundreds of Shahid drones, meant to terrorize Ukrainian cities, were destroyed before deployment. Ammunition that could have sustained artillery batteries for weeks was gone. Plans for replenishing southern air bases had to be scrapped. Logistics officers scrambled to reroute shipments, but the sudden hole in supplies was impossible to ignore. Global impact. The strike also reverberated internationally. Military analysts hailed it as one of the most daring drone operations of the war. NATO officials noted the sophistication of coordinating 44 drones across such long distances, calling it a demonstration of Ukraine's growing capacity to wage precision warfare at scale. For Iran, the supplier of the Shahids, it was a humiliating setback. The destruction of their drones on Russian soil highlighted the vulnerability of their partnership. For Ukraine, it was proof that long-range coordinated drone swarms could reach even the most remote corners of Russian territory and deliver results once thought impossible. A tactical strike, a strategic earthquake. What happened in the port of Olya was more than the destruction of one ship. It was a clear demonstration that Ukraine could strike deep inside Russian territory, at a distance once thought unreachable. In just 15 minutes, 44 drones erased hundreds of Shahids, thousands of rounds of ammunition, and a key logistics hub, all without a single Ukrainian pilot risking their life. The message to Moscow. For the Kremlin, the strike was a humiliation. A supposedly safe harbor, far from the front lines, had been turned into a battlefield. It shattered the illusion that the Caspian Sea was a secure rear zone. Every port, every depot, every air base now seemed vulnerable. The cost of defending them all would be astronomical. The morale shift for Russian soldiers and logistics officers. Fear spread faster than fire. If 44 drones could destroy an entire ship in Astrakhan Oblast, what would stop Ukraine from striking other hidden supply routes, fuel convoys, or weapons depots? Trust in the safety of the rear collapsed. For Ukrainians, the opposite was true. The operation became a rallying cry, proof that innovation and coordination could overcome even the deepest offenses. A symbol of the drone age. Globally, the operation became a symbol of a new era of warfare. Analysts compared it to the first use of tanks in World War I, or the first precision-guided strikes in the Gulf War. Ukraine had shown that mass drone swarms, coordinated, diversified, and relentless, could dismantle assets worth hundreds of millions in minutes. The legacy of Olya. The port Olya, for no longer exists, but its destruction left a legacy. It proved that the battlefield now extends far beyond the front line. It showed that in modern war, no weapon shipment, no port, no rear base is truly safe. And it sent a warning not only to Russia, but to the world. The age of drone warfare has arrived, and it is rewriting the rules before our very eyes.